We know now that in the later years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacency, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which, by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that to our minds as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 74th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment. It was near the end of October. Business was better. The war scare was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the BBC estimated that 32 million people were listening in on radios.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Cumbria, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeast, bringing light rain, accompanied by southwesterly moderate winds. Maximum temperature 19 degrees Celsius, minimum 9. Weather report supplied by the Met Office. This is the BBC. Here is King White with Leap, Leap, Leap.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt now to bring you a special news bulletin. At 20 minutes before 2 US Central Time, that's 20 to 8 our time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving towards the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the Royal Observatory confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun.
The Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with noted astronomer, Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on the event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Royal Observatory, Greenwich. Our reporter, Carla Phillips, is there ready for us now. Carla, what can you tell us about what has been happening where you are?
Thanks, Linda. This is Carla Phillips speaking to you from the Royal Observatory at Greenwich. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform peering through a giant lens. I ask you to be patient listeners during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides his ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centres of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
At any time, Miss Phillips.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment. A red disk swimming in a blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be the point nearest the Earth. In opposition, as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson?
Not canals, I can assure you, Miss Phillips, although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions peculiar to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced, as a scientist, that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars.
I'd say the chances against it are 1,000,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for those gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from Earth?
0.5 AU. Sorry, approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance.
Thank you.
Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has just handed Professor Pearson a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we're speaking to you from the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, where we're interviewing the world-famous astronomer, Professor Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience?
Certainly, Miss Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a message addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray, based at the Natural History Museum, London. 9:15 p.m. GMT, seismograph registered shock of 4.1 on the Richter scale occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Reading, Berkshire. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of British Geological Survey. Oh, Professor Pearson, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars?
Hardly, Miss Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past few minutes, we've been speaking to you from the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carla Phillips speaking, back to you in the studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest update. Professor Morse of McGill University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. This confirms earlier reports received from international observatories. Now, nearer home, comes a special announcement from Woking, Surrey. It is reported that at 9:15 p.m, a huge flaming object believed to be a meteorite fell on a farm in the neighbourhood of Horsell, Woking, near to Horsell Common. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Cambridge. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and will have our commentator Carla Phillips give you a word description as soon as she can reach there from Greenwich. In the meantime, here's Shane Ivers with Apple for the Preacher. We take you now to Horsell, Woking.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carla Phillips again at the Wilmouth Park, Horsell Common, Woking. Professor Pearson has joined me. Well, I hardly know where to begin to paint you a picture of the strange scene before my eyes. I just got here, I haven't had a chance to look around yet. But I guess that's it. Yes, I guess that's the thing directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit. It must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with the splinters of a tree it must have struck on its way down. What I can see of the object itself, it doesn't look very much like a meteor, at least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of... What would you say, Professor Pearson?
What's that?
What would you say? What is the diameter?
About 30 metres.
About 30 metres. The metal on the sheath is... Well, I've never seen anything like it. The colour is a sort of yellowish white. Curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Oh, would you mind standing to one side, please?
One side there, one side!
Oh, while the policemen are pushing the crowd back, here's Mr. Wilmouth, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Wilmouth, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped into your backyard? Step closer, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Wilmouth.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon me?
Louder, please, and closer.
Yes, miss. Well, I was listening to the radio and kind of drowsing, because that professor fellow was talking about Mars. So, I was half dozing and half listening to
Yes, Mr. Wilmot. Then what happened?
Well, as I was saying, I was listening to the radio kind of halfways, and
Yes,
it was...
Mr. Wilmot, and then you saw something.
No, not first off, I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound, like this. Kind of like a Guy Fawkes-like rocket.
And then what?
Turned my head out the window and would have sworn I was just sleeping dreaming.
Yes?
Seen a kind of greenish streak and then zingo! Something smacked the ground and knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wilmot?
Well, I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of riled.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Thank you.
Oh, want me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Mr. Wilmot, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked in a field behind us. Police are trying to rope off the road leading to the farm, but it's no use, they're breaking right through. Cars' headlights throw an enormous spotlight on the pitch where the thing's half buried. Some of the more daring souls are now venturing near the edge. Their silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. One man wants to touch the thing. He's having an argument with the policeman. The policeman wins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but now it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you caught it already on your radio. Listen. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Now, we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now? Professor Pearson.
Yes, Miss Phillips?
Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I see. And do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite. This thing is smooth and, as you can see, of cylindrical shape.
Just a minute. Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific. The end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw. The thing must be hollow.
She's moving. The darn thing runs through it.
Keep back there! Keep back, I tell you!
Yeah, maybe there's men trying to escape.
It's red hot, they're burned to a cinder.
Keep back there! Keep those idiots back!
Dolph, the top's loose.
Look out there! Stand back!
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute, something's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something. I can see peering out of that black hole 2 luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be... Good heavens! Something's wriggling out of the shadow like a grey snake. Now it's another one, and another. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body. It's large as a bear, and it glistens like wet leather. But that face, ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. The monster, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's raising up. The crowd falls back now. They've seen plenty. This is the most extraordinary experience. I can't find words. I'll pull this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be right back in a minute.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmot farm, Horsell Common, Woking. We are now ready to return you to Carla Phillips at Horsell Common.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am behind a stone wall that adjoins Mr. Wilmot's garden. From here I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. More police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit, about 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with someone. We can't quite see who. Yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted. The professor moves around to one side, studying the object, while the captain and two policemen arrive with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. A flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means. Wait, something else is happening. A humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Good Lord, they're turning into flame! Now the whole field caught fire. The wood, the barns, the petrol tanks of the cars. It's spreading everywhere. It's coming this way. About 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Horsell Common. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking on behalf of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been handed a message that came in from Horsell Common by phone. Just a moment. At least 40 people, including 6 police officers, lie dead in a field west of the village of Horsell. Their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you hear will be that of Brigadier Montgomery Smith, commander of the 47th Royal Artillery, West Sussex.
I have been requested by the Prime Minister to place the counties of Surrey, Berkshire, and Hampshire under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by special pass issued by government or military authorities. 10 battalions of infantry and light artillery are proceeding from these counties to Horsell Common and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
You have just been listening to Brigadier Montgomery Smith commanding the 47th Royal Artillery in West Sussex. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Horsell Common are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back into their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. Firefighters from stations across Surrey are fighting the flames which menace the entire countryside. We have been unable to establish any contact with our mobile unit at Horsell Common, but we hope to be able to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you... Just one moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Horsell Common where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his explanation of the calamity. The next voice you hear will be that of Professor Pearson.
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Horsell Common, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purpose here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the mysterious weapon as the heat ray. It is all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It is my guess that in some way they were able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a bulletin from Woking. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carla Phillips has been identified at St. Peter's Hospital. Office of the Director of the National Red Cross reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the Royal Artillery stationed outside Horsell Common, Woking. The fires at Horsell Common and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit and no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special statement from Mr. Harry MacDonald, Director of Radio.
We have received a request from the military at Woking to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that the BBC has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the military currently stationed in Woking.
We take you now to the field headquarters of the 47th Royal Artillery near Horsell Common, Woking.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the Royal Artillery now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Horsell Common. A situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in a pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry, without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns. All cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. And I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. It almost looks like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Basingstoke Canal. Probably fire started by campers. Well, we'll see some action soon. 2 brigades of infantry are deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it'll all be over. Now, wait a minute. I see something on top of the cylinder. Oh no, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmer farm. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube. Wait, that wasn't a shadow. It's something moving, a solid metal, a kind of shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Why, it's standing on legs, actually rearing up on a sort of metal framework. And now it's reaching above the trees and the searchlights are on it. Hold on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed on a common in Surrey tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle which took place tonight at Horsell Common has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by any military force in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest strewn over the battle area from Horsell Common to McLaren Park, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the area south to Guildford and has effectively cut the county in 2. Communication lines are down from London to Portsmouth. Train tracks are torn and services heading south from London are discontinued. Roads to the north, south and west of Woking are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. At this time, martial law prevails throughout Surrey, Hampshire and Berkshire, now extending to Greater London. We take you now to the Houses of Parliament for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of State for Defence.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You have just heard the Secretary of State for Defence speaking from the Houses of Parliament. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed the central portion of Woking is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here is a special bulletin from London. Messages received from French, German, and US scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on planet Mars. Majority voice opinion that enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. Attempts made to locate Professor Pearson of the Royal Observatory, who has observed Martians at close range. It is feared he was lost in recent battle. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above treetops, moving north towards Ottershaw, with population fleeing ahead of them. Heat ray not in use, although advancing at express train speed. Invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and train tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society.
Here is a bulletin from Horton Slough. Dog walkers have stumbled upon a second cylinder similar to the first, embedded in a reservoir 20 miles south of M4. Army field guns are being brought up from Cumbermere Barracks to blow up the second invading unit before a cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They are taking up position at Englefield Green. Scouting planes report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies in Horton. Machines also sighted by telephone operator east of Kingston-on-Thames. Squadron of Vulcan bombers carrying a full complement of 1,000-pound bombs flying north in pursuit of enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep speeding enemy in sight. Just a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we've run special wires to the artillery line in adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery, located in Englefield Green.
Range 32 meters.
52 meters.
Projection 39 degrees.
39 degrees, sir.
Fire.
140 meters to the right, sir.
Shift range 31 meters.
31 meters.
Projection 37 degrees.
37 degrees, sir.
Fire.
A hit, sir. We got the tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it.
Quick, get the range. Shift 30 meters.
30 meters.
Projection 27 degrees.
27 degrees, sir.
Fire.
I can't see the shell land, sir. They're letting off a smoke.
What is it?
A black smoke, sir, moving this way, lying close to the ground. It's moving fast.
Put on your gas masks. Get ready to fire. Shift 24 meters.
24 meters.
Projection 24 degrees.
24 degrees, sir.
Fire.
Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming nearer.
Get the range.
23 meters.
23 meters.
Projection 22 degrees.
22 degrees.
Vampire V843 off Aldershot, Hampshire. Flight Lieutenant Smith, commanding 8 bombers, reporting to Wing Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. This is Smith reporting to Wing Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machines now in sight. reinforced by 3 machines from the Horton cylinder, 6 altogether. 1 machine already crippled, believed hit by artillery shell in Englefield Green. Guns now appear silent. A heavy black fog hanging close to the Earth of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing the A320 towards Heathrow, another towards Cranford Park. Evident objective is London City. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now. We're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 1,000 yards and we'll be over the first. 800 yards, 600, 400, 200. Oh, there they go. A giant arm raised. A green flash. They're spraying us with flame. 2,000 feet. Engines are giving out. There's no chance to release bombs. Only one thing left. Drop on them, plane and all. We're diving on the first one. Oh, yeah. Gone. Hey.
This is Aldershot, Hampshire, calling Langham Field. This is Aldershot, Hampshire, calling Langham Field. Come in, please.
This is Langham Field. Go ahead.
8 Vulcan bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Heathrow. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in direction of Southall and Cranford Park.
Cranford, London. Warning, poisonous black smoke pouring in from Cranford Park. Reaches South Hall Lane. Gas mask useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Vehicles use the A320, A308, and A14. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over the M4 towards...
2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling 8X3R. Come in, please.
This is 8X3R. Coming back at 2X2L.
How's reception? How is reception? Kate, please. Where are you? 8X3R. What's the matter? Where are you?
I'm speaking from the restaurant level of the Post Office Tower, London. The bells you hear are ringing to warn people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. Estimated in last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along roads to the north. A1 and A14 still kept open for motor traffic, as is the North Circular. Avoid the bridges, all hopelessly jammed. All communication with military personnel closed 10 minutes ago. No more defences. Our army wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here to the end. To the north, I can see people holding a candlelit vigil in Regent's Park. I can faintly hear their singing even this high. Now I look down the river. All manner of boats overloaded with fleeing population pulling out from docks. Streets are all jammed. Noise in crowds like New Year's Eve in the city. Wait a minute. Enemy now in sight beyond Vauxhall Bridge. 5 great machines. First one is crossing the river. I can see it from here. Wading the Thames like a man wading through a brook.
A bulletin's handed me. Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. One outside Cardiff, one in Manchester, Carlisle, seem to be timed and spaced. Now the first machine reaches the shore. He stands watching, looking over the city. His steel, cowlish head is even with the tallest buildings. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out. Black smoke drifting over the city. People in the streets see it now. They're running towards the east. Thousands of them dropping in like flies. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Westminster. People trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now the smoke's crossing St. James's Park. It's coming towards the tower. 100 yards away. It's 50 feet.
"2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ London. Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Is there anyone? 2x2L calling 2x2L calling CQ.
As I set down these notes on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth. I've been hiding in this empty house near Horsell Common, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life, a life that has no continuity with the present furtive existence of the lonely derelict who penciled these words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Richard Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I've tried to connect them with a professor who lives in Greenwich and who on the night of October 30th glimpsed through his telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world, where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself, shall preserve human history. Between the dark covers of this little book, that was meant to record the movements of the stars. But to write I must live, and to live I must eat. I find mouldy bread in the kitchen, an orange not too spoiled to swallow. I keep watch at the window. From time to time I catch sight of a Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil, but at length there is a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam, as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in a corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Sun streams in the window. The black cloud of gas has lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm had passed over them. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road, no traffic. Here and there, a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason, I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them. And I keep a careful watch. I've seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of the trees, I am ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October chestnuts are ripe. I fill my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature, a small squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him and wonder, and he stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I shared the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. I push on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field. Beyond the charred ruins of a dairy, the silo remains standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weather clock. The arrow points north. Next day I come to a small town, vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and levelled off, as if a giant hand sliced off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of his hand. I reached the outskirts. I found Ottershaw, undemolished but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouched in a doorway. I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a man armed with a large knife.
Stop. Where did you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago from Woking.
Woking, eh? That's near Horsell Common.
Yes.
Horsell Common. Well, there's no food here. This is my country. All this end of town down to the river. And there's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
What was that? Did you hear something just then?
Only a bird. A live bird.
You get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're in the open here. Let's go over there and talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
No. They've gone over to London. At night, the sky is alive with their lights, just as if people were still living in it. By daylight, you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I believe they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Fly.
Well, then it's all over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I, 2 of us left.
They've got themselves in solid. They've wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars are probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost 1 machine, and there isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in a uniform.
What's left of it? I was in the military. Territorials. That was good. Wasn't any more war, any more than there's war between men and ants.
We're edible ants. I found that out. What will they do with us?
I've thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. But they won't keep doing that. They'll begin catching us, systematic like, keeping the best, storing us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun. All that's happened so far is because we don't have sense enough to keep quiet, bothering them with guns and such stuff, losing our heads, rushing off in crowds. Now, instead of our rushing around blind, we've got to fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves up according to the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress. Done.
But if that's so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for 1,000,000 years or so. No nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, the game's up.
And what is there left?
Life. That's what. I want to live. And so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. And I don't mean to be caught either and tamed and fattened and bred like an ox.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on. Right under their feet. I've got a plan. We men as men are finished. We don't know enough. Got plenty to learn before we've even got a chance. And we've got to live and keep free while we learn, you see. I've thought it all out.
Well, tell me the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us that were made for wild beasts, and that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. All these little office workers that used to live in these houses, oh, they'd be no good. They haven't any stuff to them. They just used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them, running wild to catch their commuter train in the morning for fear they'd get sacked if they didn't, running back at night afraid they won't be in time for dinner, lives insured and a little invested in case of accidents. And on Sundays, they're worried about the hereafter. The Martians will be a godsend for those guys. Nice roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. After a week or so chasing about the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
You bet I have. And that isn't all. These Martians will make pets of some of them, train them to do tricks. Who knows? Maybe they'll get sentimental over the pet boy that grew up and had to be killed. Some, maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
No, that's impossible. No human being would
Oh,
hunt
yes, they
them.
will. Oh, yes, they will. There's men who will do it gladly. And if one of them ever comes after me,
In the meantime, you and I, others like us, where are we to live when the Martians own the Earth?
I've got it all figured out. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under London, there's miles and miles of them. The main ones are big enough for anybody. Then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, the tube. You're beginning to see, hey? And we'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weak ones. All that rubbish will be out.
And you meant me to go?
Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I?
We won't quarrel about that. Go on.
We've got to make safe places for us to stay in, see? Get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much we have to learn before... Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off, Heat rays right and left, not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them, but men. Men who've learned the way how. Could even be in our time. Imagine one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. We turn it on the Martians, and we turn it on men, and we'd bring everybody down to their knees.
That's your plan?
You, me, a few more of us, we'd own the world.
I see.
Hey, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your world. Goodbye, stranger. After parting with the artilleryman, I came at last to the A3. I walked that silent road, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Thames. Cautiously, I made my way through Hammersmith, Earl's Court, South Kensington. There again were black powder, several bodies, an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars. Caught sight of a lean dog running down Abingdon Street. I walked up toward Westminster Bridge in the direction of that strange powder, past silent shop windows, past the House of Commons, silent, dark. Near Trafalgar Square, I noticed models of 1974 cars in the showrooms facing empty streets. From over the top of the British Museum, I watched a flock of black birds circling in the sky. I hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine standing somewhere in St. James's Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. I rushed recklessly down the Mall and into the park. I climbed a small hill above St. James's Park Lake. From there, I could see, standing in a silent row along the Mall, 19 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, their great steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabit those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to the immense flock of black birds below me. They circled to the ground, and there, before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians, with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in the laboratories, it was found that they were killed by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared, slain after all men's defences had failed by the humblest thing that God put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space, no life existed beyond our minute sphere. Now we see further. Dim and wonderful is the vision I have conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of sidereal space. But that is a remote dream. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us, is the future ordained, perhaps. Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at the Royal Observatory, writing down this last chapter of the record begun at a deserted farm in Horsell Common. Strange to see from my window the university spires. Strange to see young people strolling on the green, where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a bruised earth. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum, where the dissembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the first time that I saw it, bright and clean cut, hard and silent, under the dawn of that last great day.
The stress and danger of difficult times leave an abiding sense of doubt and insecurity in the minds of all those who have lived through them and with them. In the city streets, everyday scenes feel vague and unreal after the horror that has passed. In the cold and wretched darkness of night, the fear returns to us. In London, the busy multitudes filled the streets once more, and the city lived again, but many have witnessed the great streets of houses standing empty, have glimpsed the dead city through the smoke and mist, vanishing into the lower sky. To them, the tumult of children playing, of people going to and fro, can seem to be mere phantasms, a mockery of life before the chaos. And yet, the strangest thing of all is to hold now the hand of a loved one, or to merely see their face and to know that it is within hope, fellowship, and love that humanity still abides. Tonight we came together despite our physical distance to bring you a tale of the annihilation of the world as we know it. But it was just that. The world has not ended. We will continue to create, to laugh, to live throughout these difficult times. We hope you have enjoyed this production as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you, and we hope to be able to share the theatre with you again soon.